So, good morning, good afternoon. I just want to thank everybody for joining me for Powerful Words to Increase Your Confidence and Impact. I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO, but we are sponsored by Illumination Partners. I put these webinars out there sincerely because I care about the C-suite leaders of today and tomorrow. And this is some of my best insights that I have gotten some really good feedback on, for which I wanted to share with you. This is highly interactive. I will be sharing a bit of insight and thoughts with you, an application of some of these things that I found that work well. But when I get to the section about trying out an exercise, this is available to you for some spot coaching. If you have a particular situation or you want clarity on how to apply these principles to be more impactful and increase your confidence, this is your time. So I am grateful that you have joined us. I'm going to move now, and hopefully my technology works well as well. So there we go. So a little bit about me. I am often a trusted authority where I am asked by senior leaders to drop into their organizations and help solve technical business issues. But one of the things that differentiates me and why we are here today is because along the way, I see so often not only senior leaders, but also aspiring leaders lose their confidence and not be able to move forward in their career. So I find that there is a great benefit for which, when I do help businesses solve issues, to also impart some knowledge, some things to increase their confidence, because ultimately it is people that run the business. And if they don't have the confidence, the capability, or the capacity to do the work, it makes everything so much harder. So I do have over 25 years of experience. I hate to admit that at times, for which I have had a lot of manufacturing and operations experience as a quality, operational excellence professional, make things better, faster, cheaper, safer. But at the end of the day, I found the greatest thing that I can do is be able to elevate the impact of others. So without further ado, we will get started here. And the reason why I am having this content for you is because so often there are highly talented people, hopefully you're one of them as well, that do really, really well in their career. But at some point when you speak, you may not be heard, understood, or respected. And it gets very, very frustrating and manifests itself in the area of loss of confidence. And so my heart goes out to you. And I know what it's like. I, too, a subject matter expert, highly technical. I've been praised for what I do. That's how we get elevated in our career. But sometimes when we're at a place where we don't know how to articulate messages, have the right words, how we message things, ultimately, then we wonder what's happening. So what I want to do is talk to you about a couple things about changing mindset and how to connect better and influence your environment. So I know mindset is a buzzword that is used a lot, but there is something about common that I have found in a lot of aspiring leaders, that if you just flip the switch on some of these mindset issues, you're able to articulate in a way that makes you seen, heard, and respected. And again, at any point, I will pause after each slide. If you happen to have a question or need clarification, again, this is for you as well. So before I get into it, what to expect, I'm going to be sharing about 3 different insights with you, just a sample of what I do. And the reason why I do this is because I also offer one-on-one coaching as well as the Drop-In C-Suite Academy. But I felt really strongly, put this content out there, test it, see if it resonates, because we want to be able to impact others as well as evolve the offers that I have. What we're going to do is, in addition to sharing a best practice versus just telling you what to do, I'm also going to explain why it works. I will also give you an example on how to implement it, and then we may role play, or I may actually coach you on the spot. But what I want to do is qualify that sometimes we feel helpless, like, oh yeah, I want to apply a new skill, but the environment is just not conducive to me trying out new things, or there's a very structured way about the culture. Yes, sometimes you can't change the environment that you're in. So what we're going to do is focus on you, because sometimes when you start changing and evolving and the best of you comes out, the environment flexes to you and they start noticing. So let's get going. Mindset. This is something that I realized is I had this issue when often we are talking to people, maybe a new boss, a new leader, a new client, a job interview, or being considered for a new project. Something just comes out of our mouth so often, the int, the N apostrophe T, I suggest that we remove "nt" from our vocabulary. And this is what I mean. So often we talk about, well, I can't, I'm not, I won't, I've never, I shouldn't. And we don't even realize how often we say these words. And what I propose is that going from a negative mindset, and I don't think we have a negative mindset, but it manifests itself in these words. I propose that we reframe it as a positive mindset when we change the words and we restructure the sentences. And I can, I am, I will, I'll learn, I'll try, I'll consider. And this is why it works. Because what I'm telling you is that when we just change the words ever so slightly, we start reprogramming our mind in what is possible and being outwardly positive. It starts changing your limiting beliefs about, "Oh, I can't do that. I've never done that. I don't have the skills. It's not on my resume. They can't check the box. I might as well not even apply for that role." The point I'm making here is by changing your language, reprogramming your mindset, people who don't even know you, don't even know your background, will start seeing you as a positive person. And the reason why I say this is important is because you're probably holding yourself back by maintaining the "int" in your vocabulary. And it starts with changing the language, and then it starts evolving behavior, and then you start being seen differently, and you also start feeling differently about yourself. And so, what I'm going to do is just give you a quick example before we open this up for a conversation. And this is actually related to a very good friend of mine who she was between opportunities. And one of the opportunities that was presented to her was a sales job. She had always been a technical leader within operations, leading people and initiatives. And an opportunity in the same industry showed up in technical sales. And I remember her talking to her. I think I was in the airport. She was in the airport. She says, "I can't apply for that job because I've never been in sales." So I've never is akin to the N apostrophe T. But then I propose you could reframe it. Even if you have that self doubt inside, you could say, while sales is new, I know from my past experience, I can learn fast and quickly be effective. So what it does is it talks about not what you can't do, but what you can do. And so if you go into an interview, somebody says, "Hey, I got a new project in mind for you." You can at least pause. And this is another thing I talk about is slowing down a little bit versus reacting. I can't, I don't, I don't have that knowledge. But when we reflect and just pause a little bit and say, well, let me think about that. Sales is new, but I know from past experience, I'm a quick learner. I'll be able to be effective pretty quickly. And then you open up the door for possibilities versus letting your limiting belief hold you back. So I'd love to just pause there a little bit to see if there are any reactions, questions. Does this resonate with you? And again, I just want to open it up if you want to comment on this a bit.
No, I think what you've articulated is absolutely what I've experienced in the past, especially when I was ascending from middle management to a C-suite position. So that mindset of uh, can I do the job was very much from the space of I want to do the job, but I'm not sure I can do the job. All those negative doubts start creeping in for sure. So I appreciate the fact that mindset is critical to success here.
And thank you for those comments because sometimes we ourselves may experience that along the way. But the other responsibility we have is if we've had the good fortune of ascending to a leadership role, whether you're just a technical leader and may not have direct reports but have to influence others, or you have people in your care, it's important as leaders to be able to look at those and listen deeply, look at their body language, and see what is coming out, because then it's our responsibility to provide them feedback, which we'll talk about later. The other thing that's important here is also that while we may not have the technical capability or all of it, people, you can be approached because of all the other skills that you have. We are judged and evaluated not just on the technical work that we do, but our ability to show up, to articulate messages, to influence, facilitate any of those things that simply move something from A to B. They may have recognized those characteristics for which you potentially have the capability. And sometimes you have to have the mindset to release your potential and be able to move forward. So thank you for those comments. Another thing that I often find subject matter experts, technical leaders who are celebrated for their capability, they are promoted. They may come in as an associate, as an engineer, as a specialist. Then they go up to senior and manager and things like that. And we absolutely need to elevate these people, because if they're doing good technical work, we should continue to elevate them and give them more breadth and responsibility. But I have found, regardless of at the level that you're at, we don't necessarily coach people on how to message versus disseminating information. And there's a key distinction: information that we share with others versus messaging for impact and influence is not taught unless you happen to see that behavior or how somebody else articulates it elsewhere. And so let me explain a little bit about what I have seen. Often, a person, an associate, a specialist, scientist, engineer will say, here's the data, and it's bad. And this is what we need to do. Hurry, scurry. We have an issue or we have an opportunity. But what I have found is that something is missing. A couple things. We need more affirmative language. Is the first thing that people need to start with, rather than just here's my data and you can see from the data it's going up or down, and expect action to take place, because often people may be lost in the details. What we need to add to our messaging are a few things. I propose, I believe, I know, we need, and we must, because that starts showing the affirmative, the leadership, the drive, the influence, a call to action when we add some of those words to our messaging. And again, yes, we do have to go over the data, the details, and the trend. Another thing that I often find that is missing when we are asking our leaders, rising leaders, to be able to present information for impact, it is missing a couple elements. Now, I talked about here's the data. Is it good or bad? What we don't teach them is how to articulate the risk or opportunity. If it's something bad that's happening, you can qualify this is the risk, or we discovered something new. We need to leverage the opportunity. We need to add that to our messaging, that this is a risk to the business, to the P&L, to sales, to manufacturing, or this is the opportunity. If we do something, we might be able to realize something. And the second part of that messaging that seems to be missing is the impact, the magnitude, the numbers, speaking the language of our audience so that it resonates and hits people to engage in the conversation. Because so often we talk about expressions like what's in it for me. So when you invite people to the table to share information and expect an action, we need to understand how to message to them so that it gets through as they're processing it, hits something that resonates with them, and ultimately they respond to the information. And I'll tell you just a quick story before I go on with this. I was at the top of my game as a senior leader, the head of quality. I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and presented the monthly information on quality and safety at our leadership meeting. And I did it so well. When I was done, I presented the information. I said, we're taking care of this, this, and this. And by the time I was done, there was an eerie silence of crickets. Nothing. Didn't hear anybody engage. And it was at that moment I realized I'd missed the mark. I hadn't really presented anything in terms of risk, opportunity, impact, and a call to action to engage in conversation. And that's where leaders start getting developed. So this works because it is the affirmative language. I believe, I propose, I know, we need. It converts information that you're so good at and how it might impact others in terms of risk and opportunity and the magnitude of how big this thing is to get people interested in engaging in a conversation. And I will add, it can even be dissension. It could be controversy. It could be an uncomfortable conversation, but what you have done is moved the conversation forward. Leaders that don't do this find that often they'll say, can we take that offline? That's not in the budget. Can we talk about this another time? Let's put it on next month's meeting. If they don't understand the risk or opportunity, the impact, rather than showing up as perhaps less than knowledgeable, they might defer or deflect. And what we want to do is be more influential. So let me keep going here before we go into a conversation. And I take this from my world. I have been in manufacturing. I may have shown you flavors and fragrance industry, and I was keenly responsible for customer complaints and making sure that we don't have as many. And you could present information that simply says the data shows customer complaints are increasing, and we need to replace our equipment that tests to make sure that we don't release defects out into the industry. So why doesn't this work? Because yes, it's a statement of fact, but it's not enough information. So one of the things that I coach and train individuals, and perhaps we can talk a little bit about this as well, is that I propose that we reframe it. A person could explain the same information, but say the customer data shows customer complaints are increasing. And without making changes in our equipment, we're going to lose business or top line growth because maybe they'll move to another supplier and maybe even incur returns because they find the defect there, and that's going to affect bottom line expenses. I propose we invest in the equipment at a $10,000 cost and with an ROI of $5,000 a month, because that's what our returns are running right now. We're going to make up for this rather quickly. So that will maintain customer confidence. It sounds like a lot, but it is a better positioned statement of information that could potentially engage in conversation and impact with others. So what I want to do is just pause there for any comments, reactions, questions, or anything about your particular situation, because I feel strongly that this is something that needs to be coached into some of our rising leaders. Any thoughts?
Mine, pardon me. My initial thoughts are, the insertion of magnitude is not something that I struggle with. I'm a finance person by nature, so numbers and showing trends is what I do. I think the phrasing it, though, even the turns of phrases that you use in terms of the risk to the organization or the opportunity to the organization, or even I propose, is comes across stronger. So that I appreciated in the messaging, the example messaging you just had.
Sincerely appreciate that feedback. Thank you. And we're now going to go on to feedback. So thank you for your input. So the last thing that I wanted to go over, and I can't 100% take credit for this because I actually received feedback from somebody that worked for me one day. And I deeply care and I can see this person now, but this was so powerful for me that it changed the course of my career when I learned how to ask for feedback, because this goes to one's career development. Often, if you're a mid-career leader and you want feedback from your leadership, we don't often give them a framework to work with. And sometimes we only have our annual reviews, and maybe that's the only time we really get any solid feedback. And it can be very frustrating if not done in the right way. So, what I learned, and I do this all the time now, is when we want feedback, and again, don't expect it to be given automatically. We need to take control of our career. But when asking for feedback, whether it's in a team meeting, from a subordinate, from a leader above you, from an interested party or stakeholder, use the words, what can I continue? What can I start? And what can I change? Continue, start, and change. And I love these words so much. And there's nothing in there that says stop, because that has a negative connotation. Let's go into the three words and why this is powerful. When we talk about what should I continue, you may need to educate the people that you are asking feedback for, is that we want to know what we are strong about. We may already know about it, but getting that validation from somebody else that what is your strength is what you should continue to do, because honestly, people will have higher impact excuse me, if we continue to develop our strengths versus focusing on our weaknesses. This will become our superpower for which we know to bring this to the table each and every time, or as needed, but also not to be overused, because sometimes using strengths too much can also be a detriment. We won't cover that today, but I can offer some more thoughts around that as well. So continue is a strength. And then when you ask the question, what should I start? It's one of those things that enhances a strength. Okay, so what should I start doing? It's not a negative, but what might enhance your strength? And then finally, what should I change? Change is not necessarily negative now, but sometimes we see things in the way people act or behave for which, if they don't change it now, it can detract from a strength. And so the reason why this works, continue, start, and change, is it's based on positioning it as a positive experience. So often we don't want to give feedback, or we are scared of receiving feedback because we haven't given people the framework for which to deliver this or message this information in a positive way. Because when you do it in a positive way, sometimes you may gain insights that you didn't know about. And then this is an opportunity to close gaps that you're getting that feedback on. And that's the next thing, is they will be actionable. When you talk about a positive experience, what should you continue? Good, I can act on that. What can I start doing? Oh, I didn't realize that. I'll add that. Or you might want to change this. Oh, I'll stop doing that. I'll change how I'm doing that. It's all actionable. And it gives the person giving the feedback a framework. Because the worst thing that can happen when you say, hey, I'd like some feedback, I'd like some positive feedback, I'd like constructive feedback, which then we go down the rabbit hole of it being negative. Sometimes you're just going to get fine. And so nothing is actionable with the word fine. Or let me get back to you. And then it goes into an abyss and you never hear anything. So if you set up a one-to-one with your leader, interested party, somebody that you want to get to know more, you might want to qualify, hey, I'd love some feedback. I'd love to know more about what I should continue, those things that are my strength, what I should start doing that might make my strengths even better, and maybe change so I don't detract from my strength. Give them the framework, give them the definition so there are no questions. These are things they can think about and give you information versus backing out. So let me go forward just a little bit before we go into a discussion. So as I said, you might say, how am I doing? You're doing fine. I can't do anything with that. Or I'd love some feedback to know where I can improve. Again, we're focusing on weaknesses. Let me get back to you, and then nothing. But let me give you an example of what I saw in a particular individual that, again, I got this feedback framework from, but I was also able to use it with them. So this person who reported to me was an amazing subject matter expert in their area of safety. And every time they showed up, when they spoke, people listened. But there was one instance where we were all in the same room, and they happened to be standing in the front of the room while giving the information. Nothing changed, but then people I saw were leaning in, and there was a lot of conversation afterwards. And it was a great meeting by all, definition. But when I had my one-to-one with them, I said, can I give you some feedback? And he said, yes. And I said, how do you think that meeting went? And I said, well, I feel pretty good. I gave the information. There was some good questions. I think it was a good meeting. Well, I said, can I give you some feedback? And he says, by all means, yes. And I said, well, first of all, continue being that subject matter expert. You dot your I's, you cross your T's, you give out amazing information, and you are spot on when they ask questions. You're able to field those questions, explain it in a way that they understand. You are the subject matter expert. Continue to do that. And they were very happy and pleased and felt a sense of pride for getting that kind of insight. And I said, can I tell you what I'd like you to start doing? And he says, sure. I said, when you stood during that presentation, normally you sit. Even when you're in an office and doing a virtual presentation, you normally sit. When you stood, the dynamic in the room was completely different. Your voice carried differently, and I saw people's body language lean into you. You could see in the room they were much more engaged with you than before. You need to start standing whenever you give a presentation, even if you're in your office by yourself. You project new energy. And he said, oh, wow, I never thought about that. And I'll tell you, a week later, I saw him standing in his office giving a presentation. But the last thing I said, can I tell you what I think you might want to change? I'm not sure if you noticed this. And he said, yeah. I said, when you were standing up, your hand, and again, he had his wallet or something in his back pocket. He would, it's times put his hand and check his back pocket to make sure that item was still there. It was a little bit of a nervous thing, but I don't think he ever realized it. Maybe nobody in the room ever noticed it. I said, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. I said, because if you keep doing, if you don't change it, it might be distracting from the amazing message that you're delivering. And he said, oh, wow, I never knew about that. I said, maybe consider holding a pen in your hand just to have something to ground yourself. And he says, great, I think I might be able to do that. And so this person, again, he was already strong. He was good. After that, he started being seen and contacted to start giving insight and feedback at the global level, not just the regional level under my responsibility. So he was starting to be seen, heard, respected, and pulled in a direction for which I know that he was grateful to have that exposure based on giving some feedback in a way that's actionable. So I know I've shared a lot about that, but what I'd like to do is just pause there for any reaction, comments, feedback that could enrich this content or how it might resonate, or if I could help you with anything.
I thought this was great. I'd like to maybe switch it from a different perspective. If I wanted to give feedback, right? I'm assuming I can use similar words. This is what I think you should continue. This is what I think you should start. Any words around how to get the receiver to be in a place of wanting to be open-minded about the feedback, or how to even start to frame that conversation before you even give the feedback?
Let me ask a clarifying question to that. Is this an individual that may have not been educated or had positive experiences about feedback in the past? Or are they closed to hearing feedback? What are your thoughts about this situation?
I think it's a person who isn't used to hearing both the good and the bad. Maybe they're always bracing for negativity, or they see the formal feedback process as being daunting and scary. I'd like for feedback between myself and that individual to happen more frequently. So I want to take out the stigma around the feedback process for this individual.
So thank you for your comments. A couple thoughts come to mind regarding this. First of all, judge the frequency that makes sense. But I had monthly one-on-ones with my direct reports, and that's just seemed to be the right amount of time at the level. They were higher level senior leaders for which they didn't need to meet all the time. They knew their jobs really well. If it is more of an individual contributor that they're very transactional, perhaps weekly or twice a month might be good, just so it becomes leader standard work and is a regular event. Now, if there is, I'll use the word constructive feedback, and keeping it a positive experience. First of all, you have to start with, I want this to be a positive experience. I care about you as an individual and growing your potential. If you believe that there's maybe some barriers, you might seek to understand how have one-on-ones or feedback sessions been for you in the past, because you don't want to assume, you want to understand their past to understand what are they bringing to the table now. So always start from a point of humanity. But then, if there are things that need to be changed, we call this constructive feedback. I often talk about this in another piece of content about having constructive conversations that might be difficult. What I find is really it's about identifying a gap between expectation or standard and expectation, between one's capability now versus capability we need in the future, or capacity now or in the future. I often find when we start from a place of, well, where can we agree that perhaps getting X number of transactions done or X number of projects done in a week is what we all agree to, and agree to common ground. So it starts getting rid of some of the anxiety. And then you may ask probing questions. Where have you been? Are you getting 3 projects versus 5 projects done? Whatever that may be, what we need to do is then come and agree on, is there a gap? And then we start asking questions about what could we do? What do they need to be successful to close the gap between what you expect and where you need them to be? All of that is positive and moving the conversation forward. So I'll pause there if any of that resonates, or can I perhaps clarify more for you?
No, that is helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, me asking a clarifying question, not to assume your particular situation, is also something we need to do all the time. So very, very helpful. And I want to thank you. And where we're going to go next is that some of these things that we talked about, having a positive mindset, getting rid of the N apostrophe T's. When we talk about presenting information in the affirmative, I propose, we need to, I believe, we must, and then include the elements of not only the data, the trend, if it's good or bad, the risk or opportunity, and the impact on the individuals or the business or the customers or the community. Get it so it connects with people. And then also, when you start meeting with people, individuals against these projects, these tasks, etc., and start using words to make feedback a positive experience, just know that these are skills you need to develop. But just know that there are chances that even if you change, the environment may not celebrate it. And that leads me into the next thing. What's going to happen is if you start developing these skills or you help evolve these skills in others, you're going to be more visible. You might find that you will be asked to more meetings. You might get more emails because, hey, that presentation was good. Hey, I like the way you did it. Can you present it over here to this other leader who missed the meeting? Can you share this content? I'd love for you to share this with others, etc. What's going to happen next is that you're going to be having more challenges as you gain respect and you evolve these powerful words and messaging. Just know, potentially, in your environment, there could be people that start noticing this and see it as a threat. And I don't like to use that word. Um, okay, I don't like to use that word at all, but sometimes people may not want to see your growth. And I'm sorry to say that. Just be ready that people might want to start micromanaging you, controlling you, not passing along information, wanting to see all the information that you're sharing. It is challenging, but I ask that you try to find people in the organization for which your newfound confidence in the way you message and influence does resonate with them in a way that's hopefully not detrimental to your progress. So I'm not sure why my slides are not forwarding, et cetera, but that basically brings me to the end of my conversation with everybody. I am certainly open if there are any other questions, but I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of these insights, whether we need them or people in our care might need them. I do offer complimentary webinar for people if they think this might be helpful in their organization or speaking, or I offer other resources or ways to connect with me. If you just want to get a little bit more or ask me a few questions, I'm here to help you struggle less and be able to be successful in your career. So I'll pause there, and I want to thank my attendee for being part of this. Any feedback that perhaps you can share with me or any other questions you might have. But just before we close, I just want to say thank you for joining me.
No, I thought the presentation was great. Thank you, Deb. I think in particular, your ability to show what is oftentimes a scenario and an example of how even some of the smaller changes, turns of phrases can make such a big impact to how the message can be delivered, I thought was great. So I appreciate the presentation itself.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to stop sharing just a little bit and I will stop recording. I just want to thank everybody for joining me and hopefully you join me for the next webinar.